After the Quest 3's launch, we saw news articles and analysts claiming that the Quest 3 was going to underperform and that they were already lowering projections of sales. Many of these claims even coming before launch due to supply chain. Now, Road to VR is actually reporting on data gleaned through Meta's website that potentially the 512 is outperforming expectations. They went through and checked stock availability for purchasing the headsets directly from meta.com, and in most countries, the 128GB headsets would ship in a matter of days. The 512GB was pushing beyond a week for most of these countries. They said that this was really surprising because this is the most expensive wireless headset Meta's dropped at $650 for the 512GB model. I guess they're not counting the Quest Pro that dropped at $1,500. They do go on to explain there is a possibility that there is reasons for this. This may not be outselling, but it may be that Meta underestimated demands for the 512. Maybe they sent more of their 512 stock out to other retailers like Amazon and Best Buy, or maybe something to do with the manufacturing meant that Meta just couldn't make as many of the 512s. I'll say personally, if I go on Amazon today, I can get a Quest 3 128 here overnight, or I can get a Quest 3 512 here by tomorrow. So this may not be correct that all websites are seeing this, but it's interesting to see at least that potentially the 512s really are selling. I think a lot of people are scared of that 128 storage size, especially if they already had a bigger Quest 2. What do you think out there? How many of you opted for a 128? Did you get the 512, or are you holding out hope and waiting to see if a 256 replaces that 128? The last month with the Quest 3 launch, the channel has been so successful thanks to all of you showing up out there, and as a thanks, we're doing a second Quest 3 giveaway. We already gave one out at launch. Now we've got another one going on. If you missed that video that came out announcing that, I'll leave a link down below to that video, also to the tweet where you can get over and get entered in that giveaway. I know a lot of you out there have been telling me in the comments you want to get the Quest 3, but it's a lot or you're having to wait. So we're going to do our best, keep giving them away as much as we can. I'm not getting these from Meta anymore, so I'm having to pay for these myself. I just have to say thank you so much to all of you out there. It's been amazing. The growth of the channel, everything, the opportunities we've had to go to events and see things. It's been an absolutely stellar year. So thank you once again. And at the end of the video, there'll be a link up in the corner to get over to that giveaway. MKBHD is one of the biggest tech channels out there. You might know him as Marques Brownlee.
And Marques Brownlee.
And you might not know it by the title and thumbnail, but he actually just covered a bunch about the Quest 3. The video is tying together more about mixed reality, the future of the Ray-Bans that just launched, and the Apple Vision Pro. But overall, MKBHD seemed to have really positive things to say about the Quest 3. He talks about really liking the gaming experience on it, saying that the pass-through is much clearer, although he said he couldn't use his phone through it, which does make me wonder if maybe he got one of the ones that has a little bit worse pass-through. As I've seen on mine, and in the video, you can even see phones are pretty clear as long as you keep them out of those like too close spots where the distortion is happening near your eyes. Pointed out some interesting stuff about how certain motions when you're using hand tracking, like when you tap your fingers to pull up a menu, you sort of have the haptic feedback built in of your fingers touching each other. But when you're doing something like touching the keyboard, there is no haptics, and he said that felt a lot weirder for him. About 6 minutes of the 12-minute video is about the Quest 3. I'll leave a link in the description in the comments in case you want to watch the full video, because I think it's a fun watch. And if you're a VR enthusiast, it's always a good idea to support some of these bigger channels when they show it off, because that helps get it to a lot of people that aren't already into VR. Also went on to talk about the Meta glasses, which I haven't really talked about much yet. It's just the next generation of Ray-Bans. We may cover those in another video. If you actually want to see it, let me know in the comments, but they're not something I'm too worried about covering. But yeah, it's cool to see a big tech channel that I watch all the time talking positively about the Quest 3. There have been multiple inside sources that say we might be getting a Quest 3 Lite in 2024, and even in the early part of it. We saw a leaked internal roadmap from Meta that showed a potential cheaper Quest 3. We saw another leak talking about a Quest 3 that uses less costly components but described as a mixed reality headset. Now another leak has come out, but with even different information. An analyst out of China who's actually been pretty reliable in their past says that there is a Quest 3 Lite, but it would use the old style Fresnel lenses with black and white pass-through. The headset would be mostly focused on VR, called the Quest 3 Lite, and launched at $200 to $300. The main upgrade of this headset would be that it would have that new Snapdragon XR2 Gen 2 processor in it, and potentially come without controllers but have them as optional, all to hit that significantly low price point of possibly as little as $200. Keep in mind here, analyst claims don't always turn out to be true, and even if they are true at the time, sometimes companies pivot and change after they see the public's reaction to that news. But it is interesting now that we have 3 sources saying that a Quest 3 Lite is coming, and especially if it were able to use the same processor. So at that point, I'm curious what all of you think out there. If a Quest 3 Lite came out without controllers and only using hand tracking, in hand tracking's current state, would that be that useful of a headset to you? What would it mean for the Quest 2? My worry is that, as we've seen in the past, Meta has been somewhat quick to discontinue their support support of old headsets. The headsets still may work after that. More and more games become exclusive to the newer generations, don't support the old ones. And right now they're supporting the Quest 2 and selling the Quest 2 still, but if a Lite comes out, would it be possible to just quit support 6 months later on the Quest 2 completely? Especially as developers might be developing only for that new processor, leaving the old processor behind. A $200 virtual reality headset doesn't seem like that far of a stretch when the Quest 2 originally was only $300 with the controllers, and at the time those were all state-of-the-art components. Unless we get a lot more hand-tracked only apps though, I feel like it needs to come with some kind of controllers. Quest 3 may not be the only company considering making a Lite version, as we're hearing more and more about an Apple Vision Pro Lite also. Apple supply chain analyst Ming-Chi Kuo, who we've talked about before, having about an 81% reliability on their predictions, was talking about how they're working on a more affordable, presumably non-pro, so maybe a Apple Vision Lite headset. And this headset, instead of using the chips that are used in MacBooks, could presumably use an A-series chipset that are used in iPhones, a chipset with roughly 60% as much power as the M2. This headset would likely not come with the eyesight display, the uncanny valley eyes that people are already talking about on the front of the headset, and would range then from $1,500 to $2,500, which would be much more reachable than the $3,500 we're seeing now, as people did buy the Quest Pro at $1,500, quickly regretting it when it went down to $1,000 less than 6 months later. Supposedly this Lite headset wasn't supposed to come until 2025, but it even had to be pushed back, according to a Financial Times report. Keep in mind again, these are all analyst claims. Usually this gives us an insight into what the future is going to kind of look like, but they're not always perfectly accurate. What do you think though? If an Apple Vision Lite was to come out for $1,500, which is less than half the price of the Pro, a year later, would you hold out and get that? Are you even considering getting an Apple Vision Pro? I know at $3,500, I don't think a lot of people are going to be able to afford that. If you are a developer and you really want to get your hands on an Apple Vision Pro and see what it's like, they're actually adding 2 new cities where they're going to have locations for this Vision Pro developer labs where developers can go and actually test out the headset to get an idea of what they're developing for. With 2 new locations, it still might be quite a bit of ways to travel, as we see only a couple locations in the US, Australia, Germany, China, Japan, Singapore, England. So hopefully if you're someone who actually wants to develop for these, you're somewhere near one of those locations or willing to travel. It seemed like when the Vision Pros announced it was so far away, but if it's really going to come out in early 2024, I mean, we're only a couple months away from 2024. Upload VR recently announced they're going to be having a Winter Games Showcase on December 6th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. The Upload VR showcases are something that are starting to happen a couple times a year now, where they unveil a bunch of new VR games, updates on current VR games that we know about that are being worked on, and hopefully obviously some bigger games like what we're all waiting for. If you are someone out there working on a game that you actually want to showcase, there's another week still that you could actually submit yours to Upload VR to be considered to be part of the showcase. They have an application form. I'll leave a link to that down in the description below in case you are out there and you're trying to get involved in this. There's a lot going on out there in the Quest world, a lot going on in the VR world in general, and maybe MR, XR, whatever you want to call it now, as we see Apple coming in too. For those of you who stuck around, again, that Quest 3 giveaway is up here in the corner. If you haven't gotten entered in that, check that out. But I just want to say thank you once again, being here with me day to day, checking out the videos. It means a lot. So thank you, and I will see you in another reality.